Okay, so this time you guys have really outdone yourselves with this source material.
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack.
We've got the Wikipedia entry on the cultural impact of Elvis Presley, right? Plus, a Reddit thread with like all these contemporary reactions to Elvis. Fascinating stuff.
Mhm.
And to round it out, there's this deep dive of an article on his 1969 American Sound Studio sessions, those Memphis sessions.
Oh, those are legendary.
Exactly. So we're not just doing a simple biography here. This is a full-on deep dive into Elvis's monumental impact, not just on music, but on culture as a whole.
I mean, where do you even begin?
Right. It's massive. But we're also going to zero in on one really special thing: the creation and lasting significance of Suspicious Minds. That song came right out of those Memphis sessions, right at a crucial moment in his career. So we're not just looking back, we're trying to understand the echoes of his career, how they ripple out from this one specific point.
I'm game. Let's dive in.
All right, let's do it. It's amazing how universally Elvis is recognized as like a seismic force in music history, you know? It's not just fans saying,
No, it's like everyone agrees.
like the Rolling Stone Encyclopedia of Rock and Roll, right?
Mhm.
They call him an American music giant of the 20th century who single-handedly changed the course of music and culture in the mid-1950s.
Wow. That's a pretty bold statement, but is it really that far off?
I mean, look at the evidence. And his impact wasn't just limited to America either.
True. I mean, Rolling Stone called rock and roll Elvis's music the international language of pop. That's huge E.
And to think, one artist was basically at the forefront of this global sonic shift. Crazy, right?
It really makes you wonder, how did he manage to reach so many people so quickly?
I think it's fascinating how we seem to blend all these existing musical styles into something completely new. Like he wasn't just performing, he was creating a new sound.
Right. It was like he was a musical alchemist or something.
Q magazine ranked him as the greatest singer in the English language.
And BBC Radio placed him second in the whole 20th century, right?
Yeah, and one of the sources we got really hit on this idea. Elvis wasn't black, wasn't white, wasn't pop, or wasn't country. It was different.
It's true. He defied categorization.
And that was perfect for the time because in the post-war era, you had this youth culture that was really searching for its own identity, you know?
Mm.
And Elvis's music, because it defied labels, kind of mirrored that sense of breaking free.
Totally. They were all about rejecting those old norms. But on top of all that, Elvis wasn't making music for their parents. He was making music for teenagers.
He was giving them music to grow up with.
Which, shapes a whole generation's cultural identity. How could it not?
Completely. And it's so interesting to see how this cultural phenomenon wasn't just like some abstract thing. It actually had a very real commercial foundation.
Oh, yeah. Elvis's music, that mix of rock and roll, that high energy, country, early rock kind of thing, along with his rockabilly, the ballads, he basically laid the financial groundwork for the entire rock music industry. Can you imagine?
It's crazy to think about it, but yeah, his success proved just how big the market was for this new sound.
And it wasn't just him succeeding, right?
Right. Like you think about artists like Big Joe Turner, Wynonie Harris, Fats Domino, all these amazing African-American performers who started gaining national recognition after Elvis had broken through to white audiences.
That's such a crucial point. I mean, his crossover success was like a huge step, even if it came with all these really complex racial undertones that we're going to get into later. But commercially speaking, Elvis's popularity really opened things up for other artists, especially black artists who had been innovating for years.
It's like he paved the way for a wider range of musicians.
Exactly. And the list of artists who followed in his wake is insane. Jerry Lee Lewis, the Everly Brothers, Chuck Berry, Bo Diddley, Little Richard, Buddy Holly, Johnny Cash, Roy Orbison. How many is that? It's like a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame right there.
Absolutely. His impact just rippled out in all these directions.
Mhm.
What elements do you think they were picking up on? Like specific musical things or performance styles that they might have adopted from Elvis or built upon?
Oh, that's a great question. I think it was a combination, right? The raw energy, that rebellious attitude, and of course, that one-of-a-kind vocal delivery. He could take any sound and make it his own. It's interesting, right? Because it wasn't just music historians saying these things. It was the artists themselves. I mean, John Lennon, after the Beatles met Elvis, he said, if there hadn't been an Elvis, there wouldn't have been the Beatles. Like, end of story.
That's a mic drop moment right there. It's like, okay, John Lennon said it, so it must be true. Were there any other musicians at the time who felt similarly? Because there must have been a lot who saw Elvis and felt inspired to make music themselves.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Tons of those early rock and roll pioneers said that Elvis was like the spark that ignited their own ambitions. They saw him and thought, hey, I could do that too.
But it wasn't just about the music or the charisma, right? There was a whole economic and social context at play here in the 1950s that really made Elvis's impact possible.
Exactly. After World War II, things changed. You had the economic boom, and teenagers suddenly had more disposable income than ever before.
So they had money to spend, and their parents had money to give them. It was a different time.
And it led to this massive surge in youth consumer power. I mean, think about it. Their weekly allowances were way higher than any previous generation. It was a whole new world.
It's interesting because while teenagers in the 40s went crazy for Frank Sinatra, Elvis was tapping into something even younger. Kids as young as 10 were buying his records. It's a whole different market.
It's a major turning point. The music industry was forced to wake up and pay attention to this younger audience.
And what's so fascinating is that Elvis didn't just sell records. He created entire cultural trends, like, remember the ducktail haircuts? All the teenage boys wanted those.
And don't forget the black slacks and the open-necked shirts. It was a whole new look for the rebellious youth.
And for the girls, it was all about the pink, portable, 45 RPM record player.
It was a must-have, like the uniform of this emerging generation.
Exactly. And it's crazy to think, but the rise of those portable transistor radios really amplified everything.
Because suddenly, you could take your rock and roll with you out of the house.
It wasn't just music anymore. It was like a lifestyle.
And Elvis, right at the center of it all, became this, what was it? A national symbol of their parents' consternation, according to the Wikipedia page.
Meaning that he represented this new independent youth culture that really freaked out a lot of parents.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever something causes a stir like that, it means it's culturally significant. That's how you know.
Oh, absolutely. And it wasn't just about the music or the fashion or anything. The impact was economic, too. Like, the Wall Street Journal, of all places, even ran a front-page article in 1956 declaring, Elvis Presley today is a business. Like, wow.
He wasn't just an artist, he was a brand. And as historian Ian Brailsford later pointed out, Elvis's massive success in 1956 finally convinced the doubters about the financial potential of this youth market. I mean, they couldn't ignore it anymore.
It's true. Elvis proved them wrong. But we can't talk about Elvis without talking about his relationship with African-American music and artists, right?
No, definitely not. It's a really complex part of his story.
It's super nuanced.
Yeah, and it's crucial to remember the historical context. Racial segregation in America. Before Elvis, black artists, even though they were incredibly talented and innovative, really struggled to achieve commercial success.
Yeah, especially in mainstream spaces, there were all these limitations they had to overcome because of racial prejudice.
And black songwriters, too. Their opportunities were much more restricted.
Totally. It was a very unequal playing field.
But there are some positive shifts highlighted in the material, like Elvis buying Otis Blackwell's music, right, and then his company Gladys Music hiring Claude Demetrius, the black songwriter. That's another positive sign.
Yeah, it shows that he recognized and valued black talent.
Yeah.
But it does make you wonder, was it just a business decision or was there genuine artistic appreciation there too?
That's the million-dollar question. I mean, it probably was a mix of both.
Yeah, for sure. There's the business side, of course, because who doesn't want successful songs?
Right. But then you've got Elvis himself saying he really admired black musical traditions, especially gospel, blues, R&B.
He was vocal about his influences.
Yeah. So his willingness to record those black songwriters, to work with them, I mean, even if it was within the constraints of the time, it suggests maybe there was some genuine respect there.
It's hard to say for sure, but the potential was there, you know? And you can't ignore the fact that he invited Ivory Joe Hunter to Graceland in 1957.
That's a good point. And Hunter even said that Elvis was one of the greatest and treated him with every courtesy.
Exactly. So it's not a simple black and white situation, pun intended. But then there's the other side of the story, right?
The distrust of Elvis, transgression of societal boundaries, as one article put it.
It gets a bit uncomfortable there.
Yeah, definitely. This is where the racial anxieties surrounding rock and roll really come into focus. It was a whole new sound, born from black musical forms, and it was viewed by some as this dangerous mixing of cultures.
Like mingling of black and white people. It just wasn't done back then. It really threatened the whole social order as they knew it.
And of course, Elvis, standing right at the center of all this, became a target for all that scrutiny and criticism.
Oh, yeah. There was a lot of pushback from people who weren't ready for racial integration.
It's really unsettling, but back then, white cover versions of black artists' hits would often outsell the originals.
It happened all the time.
And the article makes a very pointed observation. This desire for black music without the black people in it, was a real thing.
Yeah, it was a way to enjoy the music while still maintaining racial boundaries.
And let's not forget that Elvis himself openly derived his style from the Negro rhythm and blues performers of the late 1940s.
He was very open about that influence. But it raises a tough question, right?
Yeah, if he was so influenced by black music, how do we square that with the fact that black artists faced so many barriers?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why did Elvis succeed when they didn't?
It's a really complex issue, right? It's about cultural appropriation, racial privilege, and the inequalities baked right into the music industry itself.
Sam Phillips even said that he knew it would be tough to promote Elvis's son's singles because of the racial barriers on radio at the time. Like, he knew the challenges black artists already faced, and he knew Elvis would benefit from his whiteness.
Exactly. And there's that story about that's all right, right. How people initially assumed it was sung by a black artist and were shocked when they found out it was Elvis.
Like, radio DJs had to clarify on air that Elvis was white.
That just shows you the assumptions that people were making about music at the time, you know?
And think about Mississippi Slim. He was one of Elvis's heroes, and he ended up being one of his fiercest critics.
That must have been hard for Elvis to face criticism from someone he looked up to, but it speaks volumes about the sensitivity around race back then, you know?
Oh, absolutely. And let's not forget the 1957 incident when Elvis was falsely accused of saying something racist.
Yeah, thankfully, Jet magazine, a major African-American publication, did a thorough investigation and debunked the whole thing.
But it shows you how much distrust there was. People were really quick to believe these negative things about him because of the racial climate at the time.
Sadly. Yeah.
And to this day, people debate whether Elvis stole black music. It's that enduring narrative that we talked about earlier.
It's complicated. You've got people on both sides of the argument, which is understandable, right?
Right. But the sources also highlight Professor Bertrand's counterpoint that Elvis helped to popularize African-American music, maybe unintentionally giving people access to it who wouldn't have otherwise had it. It makes you think, like, how do we make sense of these two opposing views?
It's not necessarily a case of right and wrong. I think it's more about understanding the nuance. Like, Bertrand has a point. Elvis definitely brought black music to a wider audience, but that doesn't change the fact that black artists were often denied the same level of recognition or financial reward, you know?
So it's like Elvis benefited from this system while also challenging it in a way.
Yeah, it's messy and complicated. And a U.S. government report actually pointed out that Elvis's influences were diverse. Like, he didn't just listen to black blues. He was into white country, white pop, and of course, gospel was a big influence too.
That's true. So it's not as simple as some people make it out to be. It wasn't just one thing or the other. It was everything.
Yeah, it's like music is a universal language, and it evolves over time. Like, even jazz, it borrowed elements from white hymns, right?
So it's all a bit of a melting pot in the end. But moving on, Elvis also faced criticism for being, well, let's say it, a danger to American culture more broadly. Not just because of race, but morally, socially. The reaction to him was intense.
Oh, yeah. It was a full-blown moral panic.
The Wikipedia page even mentions riots at his early concerts. I mean, riots. Can you imagine that happening at a concert today?
It's wild. And they weren't just harmless either. A teenage gang even firebombed his car in Lubbock, Texas.
That's crazy. It just goes to show the level of, like, cultural upheaval he represented, I guess.
Yeah, he was the symbol of change that people were afraid of. And, you know, it wasn't just teenagers freaking out. Some of the established performers even felt like Elvis would ruin their careers.
Like he was too big, too powerful, and they wouldn't be able to compete. I guess that's fair, in a way. But Elvis was also seen as a threat to women specifically, wasn't he?
Oh, yeah, like to their morals and stuff?
Yeah, the article says he represented sexual liberation, which was basically the worst thing you could be in the 1950s, especially if you were trying to please the conservative crowd.
Oh, yeah, back then sexual liberation was like a four-letter word.
And he promoted what they called an anti-parent outlook,
Mm-hmm.
and was even seen as, get this, the personification of evil by some adults. It's almost comical.
It's like, really, the devil wears blue suede shoes.
Exactly. And the article makes this really interesting point about how all this adult antagonism, like this hatred towards Elvis, was probably connected to racism as well.
Yep.
Because, you know, the term rock and roll had these black origin.
Yeah, even if parents didn't fully understand where it came from, there was this underlying fear of black culture creeping into white society.
It's like a fear of the unknown, you know?
Yeah.
And the quotes from critics at the time are amazing.
Oh, tell me about it. The New York Daily News, they called his performance just grunt and groan.
Savage.
Right. And even the Jesuits got involved, publicly denouncing him.
Wow, even the church. And what about Time magazine? They were pretty brutal too, right?
Oh, yeah, constantly mocking him. And then you have Frank Sinatra, this musical icon, calling Elvis's music deplorable and a rancid-smelling aphrodisiac.
Ouch. Can you imagine a musician getting that kind of backlash today? It's wild.
It's like a completely different world. And get this, some people even considered Elvis a definite danger to the security of the United States. I'm not kidding.
Like, serious?
Yeah. They were calling his performances a striptease with clothes on, or like sexual self-gratification on stage.
Like, whoa.
Even comparing it to masturbation. They said he was riding a microphone.
Oh, my.
I know, right? And psychologists were worried about teenage girls getting aroused at his shows.
That's just too much.
And then there was that judge in Jacksonville, Florida, who tried to ban Elvis from shaking his hips on stage.
No way. Seriously.
Yeah, he even called Elvis a savage if he dared to move his body too much. I mean, it's kind of funny now, but back then they were serious.
It's crazy how much power they thought he had.
It's almost like they were afraid he'd start a revolution or something just by shaking his hip.
Exactly. And then you have social historian Eric Lott. He said that Southern Citizens Councils were calling Elvis's music nigger music.
Which is just awful, and they were terrified that white kids would be corrupted by it.
It all ties back to that fear of black culture that we were talking about before.
Yeah.
And I thought what Robert Kaiser said was interesting too. He said Elvis's music hit people where they lived, deep in their emotions, in a way that other white performers just hadn't.
There's something to that. Elvis had this raw emotional energy that was undeniable.
Yeah, it was like he was singing directly to your soul. But anyway, getting back to the controversy, even the police got involved.
Oh, yeah. Remember the Louisville chief of police? He implemented the no-wiggle rule specifically for Elvis concerts.
Oh, man. I bet that went down well.
And Priscilla Presley herself, she later admitted that her own mother thought Elvis was a bad influence. It really puts things in perspective, you know? Like, even those closest to him weren't always immune to that negative perception.
It's a lot.
Yeah. But through it all, Elvis just seemed kind of bewildered by the criticism.
He'd often say that he was just trying to entertain people and live a straight, clean life.
It's kind of sad, in a way. Like, he seemed genuinely confused by all the negativity.
He was just trying to be himself and make music. But even after he achieved all that fame and fortune, some people still held his background against him.
Yeah, they never let him forget that he came from a working-class Southern family.
It's a reminder of how hard it can be to escape those ingrained social prejudices, no matter how successful you become. But despite all that, he's one of the most recognizable figures in history, even among people who don't even like his music, you know.
That's true. I mean, have you heard about the 1,800-year-old Roman bust that looks just like him?
What? No, really?
Yeah, seriously, it's uncanny.
That's crazy. I mean, it says something about his image, how iconic it is if people see him in a 2,000-year-old Roman bust, you know.
That's amazing, right? And all the traditions that continue in his honor. The candlelight vigil at Graceland every year, all the tribute concerts around the world, even the Elvis Presley Memorial Karate Tournament. It's incredible.
I know. And don't forget about sock hops. People still love those. He's transcended just being a musician. He's a full-on cultural phenomenon. But speaking of his music, let's talk about 1969, those American Sound Studio sessions in Memphis.
Yeah, a turning point.
It really feels like he was hitting the reset button, you know? After all that time in Hollywood, he chose to go back to Memphis to record for the first time since Sun Studio back in the 50s. I mean, that had to have been super meaningful for him, like a homecoming.
It was hugey. It was like Elvis was finally taking control of his career and breaking away from Colonel Parker, his longtime manager. You know, Parker had always been very controlling, and Elvis was finally pushing back.
He wanted more freedom. And he specifically chose Chips Moman and the American Sound Studios band, who were known for this, like, raw, almost funky sound. It was a huge departure from his usual sound, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. Elvis wanted to get grittier, more authentic, like back to his roots.
And the story about Marty Lacker convincing Elvis to work with Chips Moman is hilarious.
Tell me about it. Elvis was all ready to go to Nashville, and Marty just kept saying, no, 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 you got to try Chips Moman in Memphis. He knew it would be a good fit, and he was right.
Elvis even said at one point that he wanted to recreate himself musically.
And he wanted to get back on top of the charts.
He really wanted another #1 record, you know. He hadn't had one in a while, and he missed that feeling. But get this. American Sound Studio was a pretty bare-bones place even kind of run down.
Yeah, there were even rats sometimes. But Elvis, despite all his fame and fortune, he respected those musicians, those Memphis boys, and their work ethic so much.
It was all about the music for them.
Exactly. And the way they recorded at American Sound was totally different to how Elvis usually worked too.
Oh, yeah. Elvis usually liked to record live, with the whole band in the room capturing the energy of the moment.
Right. But in Memphis, he laid down these kind of rough vocals while the band worked out the arrangements.
And he'd come back later to overdub the final vocals.
Yep. It allowed him to be more meticulous, to fine-tune his performance, but it was definitely a change for him. But lurking in the background was Colonel Parker, and he wasn't happy about Elvis's newfound independence.
Yeah, like he was losing control of his cash cow.
Exactly. He tried to steer Elvis towards songs from the Hill and Range catalog, the publishing company that Parker had a financial stake in. It's like he was pushing Elvis to record certain songs for his own financial gain, even if it wasn't the best creative choice for Elvis, right?
Shady. But thankfully, Lamar Fike, Elvis's friend, he casually suggested Kentucky Rain.
And that became a hit.
Yeah, even though Elvis wasn't sure about it at first.
He came around. And then, of course, there's Suspicious Minds. That song almost didn't happen. Chips Moman had actually recorded it himself the year before with the writer, Mark James, but it didn't take off.
Whoa, yeah.
But Moman knew that song was special, and he believed that Elvis's voice would make all the difference.
And he was right.
But as you know, things almost went off the rails when Elvis got to Memphis with a terrible cold, and then he developed laryngitis.
Poor guy. He had to take time off to recover.
Yeah, he did. But the Memphis boys, they were amazing. They just kept working on the backing tracks while Elvis was resting up, waiting for him to come back.
That's dedication. And meanwhile, Colonel Parker and Hill and Range kept pushing their own songs on Elvis.
The pressure was relentless, and it actually led to a big moment for Elvis.
Oh, yeah. Tell me.
Elvis basically said, "Enough is enough. I'm choosing my own music from now on." And he told everyone around him to bring in any songs they thought he'd like.
He was standing up for himself.
Finally, and that's how he ended up recording Neil Diamond's and The Grass Won't Pay No Mind during the February sessions. He was taking ownership. And when he finally returned to the studio, his entourage was much smaller. Yeah, Chips Moman wasn't having any of that entourage drama. He wanted everyone to focus on the music, and Elvis agreed.
And the first song they tackled was In the Ghetto.
Such a powerful song, especially for a white artist like Elvis to be singing about the realities of ghetto life.
Yeah, there was some controversy around it for sure. People weren't sure how it would be received,
Eh.
but it was a huge hit, and it really showed Elvis's willingness to tackle tough subjects.
Exactly. It was a risky move, but it paid off. And then finally, in January of '69, they recorded Suspicious Minds. Elvis wasn't actually all that keen on it at first.
So kidding.
Nope. But thankfully, his close friend, Joe Esposito, he convinced him to give it a shot.
Good old Joe. So tell me, how did they actually record Suspicious Minds? It was a bit different for Elvis, right?
Yeah. They used this more modern way of recording where Elvis would lay down a rough vocal track with the rhythm section, and then they'd add all these layers on top: horns, strings, backing vocals, all that stuff.
Oh, so it was a really layered approach.
Yeah, and Elvis wasn't totally comfortable with it at first. He preferred that live band feel.
Right, it's more spontaneous, more energetic.
Exactly. But despite Elvis's reservations, it worked. The final version of Suspicious Minds is actually 3 different takes spliced together.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, Chips Moman really knew how to get the most out of the recording process. But then there was the whole drama with Hill and Range, the publishing company. They were fighting for the rights to Chips's songs.
They were like vultures circling overhead.
They were, and Chip stood his ground. He was determined to protect his intellectual property.
Good for him. It's his music, after all.
Exactly, and Elvis respected that. He even told his own people to back off and let Chips handle it. But amidst all this tension, Elvis still had time for kindness.
Oh, yeah. Telling.
He gave Roy Hamilton, a singer he really admired, the song Angelica.
That's so sweet.
It shows that Elvis had a good heart, despite all the craziness around him. But anyway, back to the sessions. Colonel Parker was not happy about all this. He hated that he was losing control over Elvis's career.
You can't blame him, in a way. Like, it was his job to manage Elvis.
True. But those 12 days at American Sound were incredibly productive. They recorded a whopping 36 songs.
Wow. That's a lot of music.
It was, and they got 4 hit singles out of it. In the Ghetto, Suspicious Minds, Don't Cry Daddy, and Kentucky Rain.
And Suspicious Minds was Elvis's first #1 hit since 1962.
Can you believe it? It was like a comeback story right there.
And both albums that came from those sessions, from Elvis in Memphis and from Vegas to Memphis, went platinum. It's clear that Chip's moment was instrumental in giving Elvis a more modern, emotionally rich sound.
Absolutely. And speaking of Suspicious Minds, I mean, what a song, right? He became Elvis's 18th and sadly his final U.S. Billboard Hot 100 #1 single.
It's so iconic. And the themes in that song, the mistrust, the dysfunction, that's something that everyone can relate to, even today.
It's timeless. It's about those doubts and insecurities that creep into any relationship.
It's very human. So who wrote it?
Mark James, the same guy who wrote Always on My Mind for Elvis.
No kidding. He was a talented guy.
Yeah, he was. But funnily enough, Mark James actually recorded Suspicious Minds himself first back in 1968.
Really? Had no idea.
Yeah, but it didn't become a hit until Elvis sang it. The song was inspired by Mark's own marital problems and, those lingering feelings he had for an old flame. It's that whole caught in a trap kind of feeling that the song is all about.
Wow, so it's a really personal song.
It is. And there's this great story about how it got to Elvis. Don Cruz, another songwriter, he loved the song and convinced Mark to pitch it. He just knew it was perfect for Elvis.
What a great friend.
Right. And during the recording session, Mark actually stayed away from the studio.
Why? Stage fright?
No, he didn't want Elvis to feel awkward singing such a personal song with the songwriter right there in the room. That's really considerate, don't you think?
Yeah, that's true friendship. And remember that copyright dispute we talked about? That almost killed the song.
I know. It's a miracle it even got finished.
But it did. And the arrangement is so unique.
Oh, yeah, those time signature changes. They go from 44 to 68 and back again in the bridge.
It's really clever. Like, it adds this feeling of unease, of instability.
Yeah. And the instrumentation is just incredible. That electric guitar riff and the strings, the horns, the backing vocals. It's all so dramatic and powerful.
And those backing vocals are almost gospel-like, aren't they?
Definitely. And then, of course, there's the famous fade out and fade in that Felton Jarvis added later.
Chip's moment wasn't too happy about that, was he?
Not really. He felt like it disrupted the flow of the song, but it became a signature part of the recording. And here's a fun fact. Donna Jean Gaccio, who later became a singer for the Grateful Dead, she's one of the backup singers on Suspicious Minds.
Wow, really? That's amazing. Such a cool connection.
I know, right? So Elvis debuted Suspicious Minds in Vegas in July of '69.
And it just exploded.
It went to #1, not just in the U.S., but in several other countries, too.
It's true. It was like a global phenomenon. Elvis was back on top. And Suspicious Minds was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame in 1999.